We should start a GoFundMe to buy Regan Gray some gloves for when he stood on the wing at Scarlets or Ospreys or whichever Welsh team he goes and plays for when he signs for Rugby Union. Because he's going to get cold, isn't he? He'll be like Denny Solomona. You remember him? He used to play for Castleford. Retired, didn't he? Retired very early. It was very sad when that happens to players. But what can you do?
Wonder if he had any regrets when he retired. His bank balance probably didn't.
Sami Lange's going to play for France in the World Cup.
Good. He's eligible.
We've got Courtney Winfield Hill. They've got Sami Lange. So it's all
children were born in France. So he feels a passionate desire to represent his nation of now residents.
Good on him. Good on the French.
Good job he didn't move to Wakefield. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to.
It's 4020 Not Live, the post-Challenge Cup final edition. I did not go to St Helens. I went to Wembley, as I was saying all last week. That's where I went. Phil was there. I had to watch on the telly. But amazingly, universal praise pretty much for the venue, which... What's going on? That's very un-rugby league-like, Phil. But what was it like in the stadium for all those who weren't there like me?
I think the big debate afterwards, which is a rational one to have, is should the Challenge Cup final now permanently be sited at Wembley? Because everybody I know had such a good time. Social media would indicate that was a common held feeling. I think the only two things that probably would look at Wembley as a return next year are, is there a contract signed with the stadium? Because clearly, if there is not, I believe it might not be a long one, but there is a commitment to go back. Then clearly rugby league is not the richest of sports to be able to break a contract. So that's the first thing. It will go back to Wembley, even if it's for a short period of time, to fulfill our obligations on that front. I think the other thing is, what does Wembley have that Spurs doesn't? And the only thing is the cachet of it being the national stadium. And again, if you are a sport that's always looking for more publicity and greater added value, then clearly you would want one of your prestige events of the year to be staged at what is known as the National Stadium. So I get that has to couch the debate. If you're talking about comparing the two stadia, which at the moment works better, then I'd have to say, as both a fan and somebody who laughably worked there as well, Tottenham wins hands down. I think two things struck us as we arrived at the stadium. One is that when you get to Wembley, it feels a little bit like a mausoleum. It's a big concrete and glass jungle, and it's got that arch that you can see from ages away. And if you don't arrive at the right end of the stadium you need to be at, you've got a long walk round. And clearly there is more of an infrastructure now there in terms of coffee bars and places to go and get a sandwich than there ever was. It used to be actually in an industrial wasteland, and there was nothing romantic about Wembley other than the memories that Wembley held. That's changed a little bit over the last few years, and Wembley is a more hospitable place for that. That said, there is no real infrastructure around the stadium itself. If you want to park a car, it's going to cost you 30 quid, whether you like it or not. You don't have a lot of options. There are, though, hotels at Wembley. Clearly, you can get a hotel on Wembley Way or not far away. That's all part of the fun of going down there. The walk down Wembley Way, that sort of congested avenue from the tube station, is still a great moment in sport. And I think, Huddersfield and Nottingham Forest fans will have felt that when they went there the following day. So that's effectively what you'd be giving up. But as you either get off the train or the bus or however you've chosen to get to Spurs, the feeling is more of intimacy, that it looks and clearly is a modern architectural construction. But from the outside, you think, really, they can get 65,000 people in here. Then you go in and you look round and you think, actually, we're really close to the action here. Wherever you sit, you are part of the atmosphere. And even for the 1895 Cup final, where clearly the stadium itself was not full of people, the acoustics are something really special. I don't know how they've done it, and clearly it is the most state of the art. But even with maybe a couple of thousand Featherstone fans at one end and a couple of thousand Leigh fans at the other, the sound was really bouncing around the stadium. So I would imagine the atmosphere you felt watching it on television was, massively multiplied for those that were in there. So they were the immediate advantages of being at a stadium that hopefully we will go back to. I think, in terms of a visual image of the day, the lady who sang the national anthem at the top of the stadium next to the cockerel, that's something that those who were there won't forget for a very long time. Brilliantly done, and certainly added to the sense of occasion. In terms of people who I spoke to who had either been in the corporate or fans who genuinely looked for a pint and a piece of cheese before the game, they loved it. It was everything that it was cracked up to be. Certainly from a media point of view, there's a lovely corridor that you walk through to the media area that's full of great memorabilia of Spurs pictures from years gone by, which make you feel a bit like when you go to Newcastle and we'll see at Magic Weekend the history of the place, even if it's not exactly the bit that it was when it was originally built. You feel that there is something there for those who love the heritage. There's a plaque that marks the original centre spot of the stadium, and then you realise that how they built that around what was the original stadium again is absolutely excellent. So very, very hard to pick fault with something that I think everybody who was there, irrespective of whether their team won or not or played to the best of their ability, would say we had a great time. When you walk out of the railway station, which literally is an overground station that is 500 yards and you're at the stadium facing it, I think again that adds an enchantment to the atmosphere. And whilst it does get a bit crowded post match because a lot of people are trying to use the same mode of getting away from the ground, within 20 minutes I think everybody was where they needed to be. So really enjoyable. Some nice pubs around the ground as well for those that like that kind of thing. So yes, if you didn't or couldn't go for whatever reason, special.
Sounds like getting out of Old Trafford, apart from it's London, so there's more buses and trains and things, because they have mass transit and we don't in the north. But,
exactly.
Maybe one day.
Although Old Trafford is in the north, I'm told.
It is. After I say, getting home after the World Cup final in 2013 was a complete and utter shambles, thanks to Northern Rail, I think, as they were then. I think they're different now. They're still called Northern, but they're better now because they sponsor Rugby League or something.
Northern Non-Rail, as it turned out.
Did you find the cheese? I saw people found the brewery.
I didn't. The brewery apparently was excellent and served a humongous amount of pints. So again, I'd be going back to Spurs saying, you probably made a few quid out of us. So next time we come, can we have a profit share? I didn't see the cheese, but I'm told the cheese does exist.
If we talk about Wembley and Spurs for that matter, and obviously with the World Cup going to the Emirates, I think there is a thing which, when we look back at Challenge Cup crowds in the past and club trips and this and that and the other thing that has changed in those days, and it has since I went with school in the early 90s, it's easier to go and spend a day out in London these days than it was 50, 60 years ago. So the magic of just going to London for a day isn't quite the same, but it looked good on the telly. Obviously it wasn't full. We knew it wasn't going to be full, but it still looked good and sounded good. And it can only be a positive. But people coming back saying you need to go here when we return, which whenever, that's not a thing the RFL can really change at the minute. Obviously, as you said, there's a contract with Wembley, but it's not that Wembley's bad. Just this is newer and shinier and
more
better.
Intimate. I think the other thing that obviously it's worth bearing in mind is there was a lot of talk about the attendance, as there was always going to be, and I think most people who discussed it beforehand were surprised that we got over the 50,000 mark. I think that that is more of a kudos than a stick to beat us with. But while we were sitting there trying to work out roughly how many people were in, and it sounded good anyway. And we get so hung up about attendances. You look at this year, coming off the back of 2 COVID years, coming off the back of nobody's really sure what the cost of living issue is going to be, particularly as regards, again, another whack on heating in the winter. You follow a Super League team, you've got at least 2 trips to France that you could go on. You've got Magic Weekend, you've got this international weekend coming up as well, which is, might be very good value for money, but it's additional cost. And it would be a shame if we all went to Warrington to support international rugby league. And again, there's only 2,000 or 3,000 people there. You've got the playoffs, which are not included in your season ticket, so they are disproportionately expensive. You've got the semi-final of the cup if you decide to go to that, as well as the final on neutral ground. You've got the grand final itself at Old Trafford, and then you've got a World Cup this year, which, again, I don't know about you, I've started looking at the games that I desperately want to go at. And if you're doing that as a general fan rather than maybe the fortunate position we're in and covering you've still got to work out how much diesel it's going to cost you. It's not going to be cheap to be, in Newcastle one day and St Helens in another, and Hull the day after maybe. And then you want to factor in some of the wheelchair games and the women's games, which are all going to be fabulous occasions. There's a lot of expense this year for fans. So I just think we've got to be, cognizant of the fact that we shouldn't beat ourselves up for however many people turned up at Spurs, because it's such a year where expense is going to be huge. I saw a lot of neutral jerseys, probably more than I think we have done in the last few years at Wembley, and maybe that is because, again, a lot of fans wanted to experience this perhaps once in a lifetime opportunity. But there's a lot of money being asked to be paid. I read something today, and please correct me if I didn't read it right, but the first test in cricket is this week. I believe it starts on Thursday. It's England, New Zealand, which, when you talk about cricket, not perhaps the test series that excites as much as some others when it comes to India, Pakistan, clearly the Ashes, the West Indies. There are more people to tap into, perhaps from an opposing point of view, than with respect New Zealand. They're talking about having 20,000 spare seats for the opening day of the Lord's Test match. We are not alone in this at the moment.
No, I was going to make that point. I said it last week about Wales not selling out their Six Nations game against France because the tickets were 100 quid. Again, it's 100 quid to go watch a day's Test cricket, which, you're getting a day's worth of entertainment, obviously, weather permitting. I mean, I remember I've only ever been to one day of Test cricket. That was in the 90s as a Yorkshire member. I got tickets really cheap. And I only saw half a day because England were crap back then. And I think the tickets were like 5-10 quid, if that. 100 quid is a lot of money. Plus, as you know, if you go to the cricket, you've got to spend, at least 100 quid on beer to keep you entertained, and then to keep you asleep during the afternoon session. So, as much as we can rag the RFL for many and various things, cricket's worse. And UEFA, the high watermark of complete shambles of an organisation and corrupt and all that kind of thing. So,
I think the other thing about the Challenge Cup final is there is an issue around the Challenge Cup, which is nothing to do with the attendances. It's to do with the fact that what is its appeal these days compared to what its appeal used to be. And, that's another of the things that has changed. So not only has society moved on, but if you were to pick, maybe 4 teams who were going to be at an event that you would want a neutral to support, I don't know if we had them on Saturday. With the greatest respect to Featherstone and Leigh, they're fighting their own private battle in the Championship. That isn't going to make a Batley supporter immediately get on a train and want to go to the 1895. Wigan are by far now the most successful team in Challenge Cup history. They won their 20th Challenge Cup final. It's a phenomenal achievement. But other clubs don't necessarily buy into Wigan being the greatest team. And I thought the Huddersfield fans were fantastic. And again, anybody who just concentrated on the Huddersfield fans behind the posts where they were obvious missed the fact that there were a lot of them actually sat in the stands, certainly behind the media area. People of a certain age who were reveling in the fact that Huddersfield were back on the big stage. But if Huddersfield can't attract their own fans in great number, they're not going to attract neutral fans in great number, hopefully being there and getting so close, they will. So again, don't beat ourselves up with the fact that maybe the Challenge Cup needs some TLC, which I don't know if we can give it in the current environment, which means that it's not going to get a sellout crowd by virtue of it just being the Challenge Cup these days.
And I think that's just the thing with cup competitions in sport in general. The FA Cup isn't what it was. I mean, it used to be the final game of the season. Obviously, the Challenge Cup wasn't because the Premiership came afterwards, and so on and so forth. But the FA Cup final was the final game of the season. This year, it's like kind of squished in between another round of the Premier League and the European Cup final, which was obviously the game that came last, but not always had an English club in. Rugby Union's cup competition that we mentioned before used to be a big thing, and now is an insignificant competition held. They held it in Northampton or something, or Reading. They held it somewhere where, much smaller venue than we had our. And obviously that's been overtaken by their European competition as well. So I'm not saying that they're on an equal level, but cups aren't the same because everything's about the league. And even if you changed our structure again to first past the post, it wouldn't change anything. The grand final is the be all and end all now. The Premier League is the be all and end all in football. They are the things that matter. And the Challenge Cup it's still important. It still has reverence, but it's not what it was. But no cup competition is.
No, and I think, again, there is an element of romance that we will never recapture. That apart from it's the big showcase game where everybody should go down and, we go to London a lot now, so it isn't the big showcase game. But I can't see, well, obviously, it's not going to be anything other than two Super League teams, because that's why we instituted the 1895 Cup. So it is going to be effectively, it's going to look a lot like a Super League fixture. And historically the cup hasn't. This was always particularly, following a team in blue and amber, never any good in the league. Never going to be consistent. Team of individuals when it came to week in, week out. But put a cup run on, every chance of, getting to Wembley or wherever it might have been. And I think that, that those days of having a cup run are not quite the same anymore. I think added to the fact that,
and a cup run of 3 games. Yeah.
Well, again, no disrespect to Wigan, they've won the cup. They deserve to win the cup. They managed to do exactly what they did in the semi-final and pull out the big play when it really mattered at the end. But as you say, 3 games to win a cup is not the same as starting in January and maybe playing an amateur team in a freezing cold ground and following the competition through, up until the 3rd round, then the quarterfinals, then a semi on a neutral ground, and then a final. It doesn't have the same place in the fixtures as it used to have. Much better this year, having it in May. I thought it really worked. Much better having only a couple of weeks between each round to build the interest. Great that yet again we have a team that hasn't been in a grand final appearing in a Challenge Cup final for opportunity there for Huddersfield, which you can debate until the cows come home whose fault it was that they didn't take it, but it was there for them and they couldn't manage it. And unfortunately, they will now, under Ian Watson, look to build on that. Was that their moment in the sun, a bit like Castleford the other year, a bit like Salford the other year? Time will tell. And Ian Watson clearly is building something there, but the Challenge Cup is not what it was because the Challenge Cup itself is not what it was.
Well, the trophy is still the best trophy in sport. I tell you what, the thing that's been doing the most work this season, I think, are the Rugby League World Cups, because they're everywhere. I think I've only been to 2 games this season in Super League, and they were both of them. They've been at Bramall Lane because my mate saw them and said, the Rugby League World Cup was here. They were there on Saturday. Obviously, the England captains were on the telly as well. It's all very exciting. Of course, the Wheelchair Challenge Cup has a team that's not in Super League in it because the Catalans aren't in Super League, but they're in the final against Leeds in a couple of weeks. So, in fact, that'd be about 3 weeks' time, wouldn't it? I'm just looking up at my calendar. Unfortunately, the RFL sent me a push notification through today saying, after the excitement of Spurs, don't forget 2-for-1 tickets to go to the internationals. And I thought, no. And I was asked to work that same day, and I thought, shall I work and earn money, or shall I go to Warrington? As much as I'd like to go to Warrington, I also like money. So I'm not going to go to the internationals, unfortunately. I'm a professional. I've sold out. I'm a mercenary. I'm going to take the money when it's on the table. So I won't be going to Warrington, but I will be watching it afterwards on TV. I'll be adding my pot to the viewing figures, which apparently were good for Saturday. 1.5 million the peak, which I was trying to find the number for the Women's FA Cup final this year, because I think that's a good place to start with now, because there is a lot of promotion of the Women's FA Cup, probably more promotion of that than there is of the Men's Challenge Cup. And I can't find the figures for this year. Now, we would have beaten it last year because they got 1.3 million as a peak. But the fact that I can't find the figures for this year suggests that they weren't as good as last year. But 1.5, Dave Woods is happy, so it must be good.
Greatest share since 2008 and
great,
the highest peak since 2016, which again, I know there were people there from IMG. And I would have thought, if we broaden the discussion about why the Challenge Cup is still important, even though it might be different, and why it was important, it looked good this year, possibly more than any year in previous times, because of what it could actually mean. If I was an executive of IMG and I saw that atmosphere, that stadium, and even was pleased to think that it's not at capacity, because that's where they're going to make their money. If they can look at the properties that are on offer and they've got some kind of a deal whereby they get a share if they can increase the number of people in the stadium and the number of markets that watch it, you'd look at that and go, this is undervalued. We can do something with this. It's got great viewing figures, great game that went to the very last play. First game, a narrative in that about, are we looking at one of the teams that is going to be coming into whatever Super League may look like? Well, that is under our control as well. And clearly that was colourful and some skill and some fans are clearly investing in these teams. If I was IMG and I looked at those figures and I looked at the atmosphere in the ground, I'd be saying we've invested in the right sport. So, again, from that point of view, anybody getting hung up about the attendance and nothing else, with the greatest respect, you've missed the point.
And I mean, it's comparing apples and oranges, but there were more at Spurs than they were at Wembley at the same time watching Mansfield and Port Vale, which are they two similar sized places to Wigan and Huddersfield? Possibly, I don't know.
Well, they were all in the service stations afterwards. It seemed to me that the Mansfield fans were crying a lot. I don't know why.
Poor old Mansfield. But poor old Huddersfield. What a terrible weekend for Huddersfield as Huddersfield Town lost to Notts Forest. Call them Notts Forest to annoy Forest fans. It's very, very funny. So the games. Leigh beat Featherstone in the 1895 Cup final, thus ending Featherstone's hopes of retaining the Cup. And Blake Ferguson scored, and there was lots of points. It wasn't quite the final of last year, but we didn't think it would be. And of course, we haven't learned anything in terms of who's going to be promoted. But what we do know is they both should be promoted, and we should have a 14-team Super League. I've got a feeling that the people who are proponents of a 14-team Super League, Phil, want a 14-team Super League with Leigh and Featherstone in, and then maybe we'll just close the trapdoor and that'll be. I don't know. Maybe that's just me being cynical, but I don't know.
I think driving back, looking at the game, I think firstly, if you solely concentrate on that 80 minutes, fantastic performance from Leigh. Well done, Adrian Lamb, and the story of Edwin Ipape is worthy of column inches alone. From a very remote Highland place in PNG, the country that Adrian Lamb himself is from. Difficult to get him over and playing rugby league for Leigh, but Adrian had seen something in him that he wanted to work with him and came off the bench and changed the whole dynamic of the game. And it could well have been that Leigh would have won it anyway, because it looked like it was their day, and Featherstone just made too many mistakes, but B, didn't have enough creative outlets to challenge Leigh, who had some really big players across the team. But Ipape was the jewel. And it was a lovely story to talk to Adrian Lamb about him afterwards, and what it would mean when the pictures and story eventually got back to PNG, as to people in his village would just be unbelievably joyous. It's a great story, but I think Featherstone will have learned more than Leigh from that. I think both clubs realised that it can't possibly be a form line through to what is likely to be the £1 million game between them. But there's something about Brian McDermott, and he said it afterwards, and he said it with the kind of conviction that you know from his past history, that he will have learned more about his team for the forthcoming games against Leigh by a defeat than he would have done from a victory. And it takes you back to the time when Leeds lost by over 60 at Castleford in 2017, and McDermott even after that said he'd seen enough to know that his team could win a grand final, and everybody burst their sides guffawing at what he'd said. But what happened the next time the two met in the game that really mattered, and he lost a couple of league games to them after that 66-10 thrashing, I think it was at Weldon Road at the time. But what he knew was what he needed to mould his players to be, so that when it really mattered, he had a game plan that could overturn that. And yes, there were other extraneous reasons, and please don't write in and tell me it was all to do with Zach Hardacre. It wasn't. It was partly to do with Brian McDermott being able to work out exactly what he needed to do when it mattered and have a different game plan at a different venue on a different night. And I just got the impression that whilst Featherstone would love to have retained that trophy, they didn't have enough in their armoury to do it. So he now knows, notebook out, this is how we're going to approach the second half of the season. I think that makes them really, really dangerous. I don't think 70-0 victories leading up to a game like that did either team any favour. And on the day, Leigh was superb and had all the key players playing to a better level of rugby than Featherstone. Featherstone had Mark Corella as their major threat, and Craig Hall, when they could get the ball to him, it was to Leigh's credit that they could only get the ball to him twice in the game. On both occasions he scored, but they didn't create enough, whereas Leigh really bought into the occasion. I think Derek Beaumont had the joy of receiving the trophy from his wife. Lovely. I would say of the two teams as they came off, both with immensely studious coaches as to what they just witnessed, for me, it just made Featherstone a bit more dangerous.
And don't Featherstone play Bradford? Is it this week, next week? It's on 10,
well,
isn't it, soon?
The stupid thing, and again, I'm not blaming anybody because we decided how many fixtures we wanted, and the clubs bought into that as much as the governing body, and everybody said, oh, we've got to have a free weekend when the internationals come round, including the championship games, because if Ireland and Wales and Scotland are all playing, they'll be taking players from the championship. So we've got a double round this weekend in a part-time competition. Everybody's playing Thursday because it's part of the Queen's Jubilee, but nobody actually knows what day that is. So we'll have 4, and they're all playing again on Sunday or Monday. So yeah, Featherstone go to Newcastle on Thursday, and then I think they're home to Bradford on premiere on Monday. But again, all of these teams with threadbare resources and taking a lot of players who are either on dual reg or loan from Super League clubs have got to play 2 games in 4 days. And heaven help, we should mention the words player and welfare in the same sentence. It is nonsense that division is playing twice. They should have played 1 less round, but we're coming back from COVID, so we're not allowed.
The Queen will be glued to BBC Sounds on Thursday to listen to all the games to find out what's going, if they're on. I don't know. But we'll find out. So that's Thursday. I knew there's a reason why we had to do the podcast, even though Halifax and Dewsbury are probably playing as we speak, or in a bit anyway. So yeah, double round of the champion. I've not bought the paper, so I don't know, because I thought this cup final, it happened. It was on
There's
television.
quotes from people who were in it.
Yeah, I mean, I would have spoken to him. I would have counted the crowd, but I wasn't there. So I think I've not even watched Celebrity Pointless yet either, but I have watched Question Sport and taking the recommendations of people more intelligent than I fast forwarded through most of it because bloody hell, it's terrible.
It's a tough watch.
It doesn't even say a question. It's not even a question of sport anymore. It's just question of sport. It doesn't make sense.
It's not even sport anymore. Anyway.
No. Before we get cut off and have to start again, I don't know why Zoom started doing this now. Congratulations, Leigh. Commiserations, Featherstone. We look forward to seeing those games in the future. And it's almost like, as you said, that those 70-0 victories don't do them any good. They are the Saints and Leeds and York of the Women's Super League in their own, with no disrespect to the other teams in the championship, but they are fighting their own personal arms race, as we know. And How good was Blake Ferguson? Because obviously this is now his second game and he's scored 7 billion tries. He's won a cup already.
He's a great finisher, but we knew that. Leigh found a way of getting the ball to him better than Featherstone did to any of their strike players. So I think again the interesting thing about Featherstone's selection was Jonathan Ford on the bench didn't seem to work. I think he's either got to start and control the game, or you go with a different choice. But he seemed an unnecessary luxury in many respects to try and get to the pace of the game. Whereas I think Ben Reynolds was very influential for Leigh. I think both sets of fans deserve an enormous amount of credit for the way they approached the game. They were just there to have fun and enjoy themselves. And I don't think too much was read into the fact that there was a trophy up for grabs. It was the next stage in the instalment of, Featherstone won the first one. Leigh have now won the second one. They come together at the Bash for the third one. Brilliant. Let's just now promote the hell out of the Bash. It'd be good.
I think I've put it on my wall planner, and I haven't. I think I'm going to go to the Sunday of the Bash, which is when they don't play. But
that's another expense for fans, which again we talked about the whole litany of events that people are paying out for these days. Bash weekend. Why wouldn't you want to go? Whether you were just a neutral or a Super League fan, and it might be another 20 quid, and it might be Leeds rather than Blackpool, but it's still an expense.
Yeah, Blackpool's more expensive because you end up spending it all in Coral Island. Before we get onto the Challenge Cup final, because last week we spoke about London Scholars, and they only went and beat Oldham.
They didn't just beat them; they thrashed them.
I think we jinxed Oldham.
Sorry, Oldham.
I think we jinxed Oldham. No one's going to want to come on and speak to us anymore. That is for sure. Great result for the Scholars. Obviously, I mean, London Broncos got rid of their coach. London Scholars have won. All eyes on the capital again. So a great win for the Scholars and kickstarts their route up from the bottom of the League One table. I don't know who they've got this week because I've not got the fixtures in front of me, but they don't have to play 2 games, do they, in League One, because there's less teams in that division.
Yes. Yep.
I'm seeing if they do play this week, and I can't. Oh, they're away at Cornwall. There you go, 1 o'clock on Saturday afternoon.
The big one. The Steve Mascord derby.
That's of course on at the same time as Castleford and Wigan. He's on He's on
Channel 4.
Yeah, Channel 4.
Which again, fallen well for Channel 4 that the Cup winners' first appearance is on Channel 4, which is great.
Big hello to IMG if you're watching as well. They're monitoring the media, Phil, which I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. We'll find
Thank you to anyone who recommend they should monitor us, because there were a few, which was really kind of them.
So the Challenge Cup final, which I'm sure they were glued to, saw Huddersfield up against Wigan. Wigan in their 143rd year celebrating that with a 20th Challenge Cup victory. It's just like the olden days. Huddersfield, like the olden days, didn't win. And they could have done, and perhaps, without taking anything away from Wigan, perhaps Huddersfield should have won. Well,
I think there was a great magnanimity afterwards in Wigan, and I think we should pay immense credit to the work that Matty Peach done. I believe that was his 17th game in charge, and he's delivered them a trophy. But there is I think that it's not fair to say there's a different attitude about Wigan. It's just that he has rebuilt the club on the values that they stood for. And I think that both he and Ian Lenigan and add into that Chris Radlinski all said after the game, we know how fortunate we've been to win that. And whilst it was a magnificent play at the end from a great young player who stamped his authority on the semi-final and did exactly the same again on the final, and that's great to see. And clearly we need to talk about the role of Tommy Leuluai in that, in allowing Harry Smith to be the player that we'd hoped he could be. I think Wigan realised that, yes, get the beer open, sit in the centre circle long after people have gone, enjoy the coach ride home, enjoy the homecoming at Robin Park in front of all of their great fans. but they were fortunate, and they were the first to admit it. We're not saying that because we've got some deep, love for Huddersfield, or it's a better story if they win for the first time since 1953. I think there are a couple of things that Huddersfield will look back on and say, we perhaps could have done that a tiny little bit better. And that may have been the difference between winning and losing. Whereas Wigan hung in there, particularly in the first 20 minutes. I think what gets forgotten with Huddersfield didn't score enough points when they were on top is the fact that Wigan's defence was absolutely magnificent when they were under the cosh. And ultimately, that was what came back and kept them in the game. And, was it 3 minutes from time? A magnificent move, which Leuluai doesn't get any credit for, but he throws them an amazing long-range pass to Harry Smith to give him the time and the space for Smith to weigh up what was happening. And Smith puts in the perfect kick, which again, under pressure and at speed and with everything that was happening around him at the time of the game, that this was probably going to be the final opportunity they had to do something, and saw Marshall say, I need it, and I need it early, and Marshall then gets the perfect bounce, but is exactly where he needs to be to exploit that. That's brilliant, and we should focus on that. And we can all talk about whether Morgan Smithies should have still been on the pitch. We should all talk about Tuilahia's goal kicking, and that did ultimately was a difference between the two teams. We should talk about Huddersfield's 6 tackle plays in the second half when perhaps they went conservative and didn't look to win the game, but looked to hold on to what they already had. And that's what they'll learn from in those sort of situations. You look at, again, Chris Hill's dominance in the opening 20 minutes, but did he go into the game with an injury cloud? There are some saying that he did, and that it, came back a little bit perhaps to haunt them. Did they go for a conservative bench selection? Hindsight is a really wonderful thing, but the ones that they picked, who was going to change the game if they needed a Harry Smith moment themselves? And should Will Price have been Will Smith? That would have been interesting. He could play Will Price in the film. Will Price have maybe been on the bench to give them something a little bit different? All of that is up for debate, but actually it doesn't matter. Wigan found something that Wigan teams in the past have found, and they found in the semi-final against St Helens, and Huddersfield, who were, again, I don't know what more Ian Watson has to do as clearly one of the great coaches of the modern generation, but he's now been in 3 finals with 3 underdogs, and those underdogs haven't had what it takes to just get over the overdog. And I think, again, as we said, with Featherstone will learn a lot from defeat. You would hope that that Ian Watson, who will have got his little notebook out on the way home on the bus, went, next time, a couple of things I might do differently.
I'm trying to find the England performance unit squad thing. Is Harry Smith in it? Do you know, Phil, off the top of your head?
I think he is in the England Knights, but I don't know whether he's in the
because our
full England team. I don't think his form last year warranted it.
No, I'm just thinking because the halfbacks for England at the minute are not necessarily in form. The ones at Warrington are just. I think it's interesting to see they've described Chris McQueen as an overseas player on the RFL website. Of course, the England international Chris McQueen, but there you go.
Well, again, we can talk about why he was the man of the match, and you already know the answer to that because we were asked to vote 5 minutes from time when Huddersfield were ahead. Interestingly, I think we all felt that when a game is as close as that, if you still have to physically write down your selection, give it to somebody so that they can count it, so the BBC can announce it before the game ends, we should be allowed to vote for a player from each team. And then if in that closing 2 or 3 minutes, yet again, what happens is the team that loses are ahead, but ultimately get defeated. We should be allowed to say, if X wins, they're my choice. If Y win it after you've asked me to vote, I would vote for them. And then I think Harry Smith would have got the vote. And I'm not sure whether you're then saying, the losers team can never win. I just think the winners team should have an option on winning it. And if enough people had voted, say, for Harry Smith as their Wigan choice, he would have got it. If Chris McQueen had still got more votes, he would have still won it. But I do think that sometimes, where people are saying, yeah, McQueen had a decent game, but why didn't Harry Smith win it? Well, because when we voted, McQueen's team were winning.
And because we genuinely do vote on paper and pen.
Yeah, we do.
With someone from the RFL counting it. So that is how it works in 2022. So just one of those things.
But Huddersfield were fantastic, and they did really well to get themselves. But you thought that once they'd got a lead, but you didn't think it was going to be enough, and they got pegged back. They wouldn't have anything else, but they did. And McGilvery had his moment, which was fantastic. And but then the try that Wigan scored just after half time, that one time that French and Field combined, that was rugby league at its very, very best. That was absolutely glorious. And perhaps that was, again, a slight difference between the teams, that Wigan's great players in the minute was slightly better than Huddersfield's great players in the minute.
Field looked like not Field. French looked like he was running the 100 meters. He was going that fast. You like to see wingers do that. You like to see fast tries, and it was exciting. That's what you like to see. And
there was just half a second when Innis Senior, who had a brilliant game and could, hopefully goes on to be an England international himself, just made that decision to offer too much of the outside to French by just deciding to come in. Again, a lovely pass getting French away on the outside. And once he was gone, Field didn't get any opportunities in the game because Huddersfield worked so hard to close him down. Kick chase was excellent, but there's going to be a half break. He's going to be on the end of it. He proved to be the difference.
It did indeed. You wanted to talk about Tommy Leuluai. What a player at his age to still do what he does.
I mean, it's a fantastic story, and he was told that the injury that he had was going to be a 12-week healing window, which at the age of 37 could even have been longer. He decided, along with the medical people, they'd do it in 6, which again, astonishing. What sacrifices he's made to be on the field. But Wigan needed him. Clearly with Sam Powell getting a ban, they needed a pivot player. But again, he was told that he wouldn't be playing too much game time, that they would use him sparingly. And of course, the one injury that they hadn't anticipated was Cade Cust. So Leuluai comes off, sits down, thinks, I've done my bit. We're in danger of being well and truly overtaken in this game. Hopefully I've done my little bit to bring us back to something near parity. And then he gets the call going, oh, by the way, Cust's coming off. Not only are you going on, but you're going on at halfback. That position you haven't played for about the last 6 years. And, well, what do you want me to do? Get us some points, because we haven't got enough. What we want you to do is take all the pressure off Harry Smith. And again, I just think that he was magnificent. If ever there was an epitome of team first, and that's what the Matty Pete Wigan stand for, Tommy Leuluai epitomised all of that. Didn't make a mistake that I could see. Everything that he brought to the field enabled Wigan to win that game. As I say, the pass to Smith for what ultimately proved to be the match turning moment was just genius. And so modest afterwards. People wanted to know, is he playing on next year? And he said, I've effectively retired about 3 times. But was brilliant, absolutely brilliant, and was never going to get a vote for or a significant amount of votes to be man of the match, but was arguably the most influential player on the field in the 2 spells that he had. When he came off, he just lay on his back. I mean, he literally was exhausted, but gave a brilliant interview afterwards in the mix zone and played down his contribution when really, every team needs a Tommy Leuluai.
You got Ricky Latelli right, though. First try scorer. So
I did, 14-1. If only I was a betting man. Hope somebody profited. And both who listens to our show and the same was on Mr. Kellner's Talk Sports slot at 4:15 in the morning. So any airport workers who remember the name Latelli and went to the local bookie, I hope you Hope you earned a few quid and had a drink on us.
I've had some weird sleep patterns recently. I don't know why, but Saturday night, Friday I didn't listen, but Saturday I was listening. But obviously you weren't on then because it had been and gone. But I didn't. I should have phoned up for How Old Cary Grant, because that's a great game. But I might have to put on an assumed name or something.
And he was there, Mr. Kellner, at the final, along with Paul Hawksby of TalkSport fame, which again is just great PR. I didn't hear the beginning of the Hawksby and Jacobs programme on Monday, but I suspect that Paul Hawksby mentioned he'd had a very good sporting weekend and where he'd been. And I think they get something like, is it 1.5 million listeners to that slot?
Something ridiculous. And then Samkins was on there the other day as well, wasn't
yeah.
it? So that's all good.
That again, if you're IMG, you're totting up these little things going, I think we can probably do something.
They are media partners of the sport. So it's good to keep them on side. So all in all then, Saturday was good. Lots of positivity coming out of it. Nothing's perfect, but we can build on whatever happened. Fingers crossed we go back to Spurs. And obviously now we look to the future and say, without discounting Catalan Dragons, are Wigan going to be the ones that stop the St Helens run of terror in terms of winning the Super League title?
Well, they're going to be without Smithies for 4 games. Cost, I've not seen what the medical outcome is on him yet, but I think he's going to be out for a little while. It looked as though even when they were getting the cup that he had his elbow inside his shirt, which is never a great sign. So yeah, every club, we're entering a period of the season where resources are going to be taken to the absolute limit. So I'm not sure we can read too much in other than the fact that Saints will still be there, the forerunners. Dragons are doing some really good business for next year already. And I think, there's some players that they're going to be saying goodbye to that they're going to want to go out in the right way. Warrington have signed a couple of players. Be interesting to see how they approach the second half of the season. So yeah, I think, we had a great showcase event in the middle of the season. Let's see if we can pick up that baton and run with it.
All the Wakefield fans aren't going to be happy now because another player is reported to be leaving, which is Jacob Miller, which everyone knew about because it was weeks ago. With John Davidson confirming that story earlier, as far as he understands, off to Castleford. See what happens. Wait for them to sign some place just to keep the fans happy. But they're going to look down the stadium soon. You'll be able to buy bits of it. So I don't know if I'll be able to, buy.
Which bit would you want to buy? The only bit I'd want to buy is the grass, and I don't think that's up for sale, is it?
The ISDN point that I used to plug into in my early days of broadcasting, doing non-league football there.
The wooden door into the press box where we always used to shout, "Shut the door!"
I don't know what I want from Bellevue. I don't know because I don't want a turnstile or anything. Because what do you do with that? You can't put it in your garden. It looks stupid. Let's have a lump of it, like the Berlin Wall.
A seat. Do you want a seat from the main stand?
If we could get a row,
Put in your shed.
Yeah, yeah. Could get a seat. I'll see if Mr. Carter will cut me a deal. I don't know. I think I probably still owe him for working there, but it's all exciting. And maybe Wakefield's new stand will be like Spurs, and maybe Castleford's will be as well. And we can all look to the future, and it'll be nice just to have stadiums. So it's all good. It's all good. Is there any other news this week? We mentioned,
probably, but I think the important thing has been just to focus on the cup. There's lots of transfer speculation, and there'll be more. There's some games coming up. We can talk about them when they've happened. There's a dual weekend, as we've said, of the Championship. That's going to, I think, again, there's some teams at the bottom that need at least one win from these 2 games. There's some at the top that just need to keep enough players on the field to take a breath and move into the next part of the season. And I can't see Featherstone and Leigh stumbling at the moment. And 2 games for them is going to extenuate the gap between they and everyone else, I think.
If there's any reserve games scheduled this week, and they'll all get cancelled because all the Championship clubs are going to want to nick players on loan. So that'll be a waste.
But there will be a debate to be had about the value of reserve grade when you are having results like 100-0. And I think we already know the answer to that question. It's come back at least a year too early.
So we're all excited because it was a big positive outcome
it was.
on Saturday.
If your team lost, then console yourself with the fact that you were part of a really, really positive weekend for the sport.
Next week, we will have a guest on from Australia, which is exciting because Origin's back. The pinnacle of the sport. The pinnacle of the sport. State of
Origin.
The
Maroons. Go the Maroons.
Maroons. We'll have to. I'm going to ask about that because what is that all about? What is that all about? So that's coming up next week on the program. Possibly when are you free Wednesday morning, Phil? Does that work?
I don't even know what my name is, so I will check my handwritten diary and let you.
I haven't got a time sorted yet, but he said Wednesday, and I said possibly. I'm working Wednesday afternoon, but we have to record it. So look out next Wednesday.
I may be around, but I'll let you.
Thank you for watching and listening. It's a very low energy program today. I couldn't sleep last night. I don't know why. So I just gave up.
I think it's because you've had your hair cut.
Yeah, I think so. I gave up about 6 o'clock and thought, I'm not going to go to sleep now. I'm just going to stay up. So as long as I sleep tonight, it'll work tomorrow. But happy Jubilee to all our listeners. I'm sure you're all having street
parties.
She listen? I don't know if she does. I don't know.
Happy Jubilee, Mum.
She'll listen to that one with Mike Tindall, won't she? Because it's family. Or she'll at least download it, even if she doesn't listen.
I think she's a closet League fan.
Yeah. She's in Wakefield when at Wembley. She's more than I've done. So, did you see that picture I posted the other week of Derek Turner with Shirley Bassey? I think I mentioned it last week, didn't I?
Yeah.
What a bizarre picture.
She was probably on at the Wakefield Theatre Club at the time.
Very odd. Very odd. If you've got any, did anyone from Wigan have a photo with, I don't know, Kim Marsh or something? I don't know. Let us know. And the other thing is, where's Jacques O'Neill? He's supposed to be on Love Island, but he wasn't in the cast announced yesterday. So
surely not.
I don't know. I mean, I could probably have a word with some people at cast, but I couldn't be bothered. So thank you very much for watching. The magazine is being finalised, Phil, this weekend, and then it'll be out.
And now the weekend after it'll be out, but it'll be heavily reflecting a lot of what we've just spoken about, and some nice features.
Yeah. And some criticism of a question of sport. See how much of that gets through, and we will see you at some point next week. But enjoy the bank holiday, and especially if you're working and getting time and off.